Hello, Sam from Sound on Sound magazine here. I'm at SynthFest UK in Sheffield. I'm with John from Cong Burn. How you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, doing really good. Like, good to be here. It's not too far to travel for me. Closer than Superbooth at least. So.
Yeah, definitely. I have to ask you, before we talk about the product, I have to ask you where the name Cong Burn comes from.
Yeah, the Cong Burn is a very small stream river in the north of England. It's kind of like an in-joke between a few of my friends that, like, when people say Cong Burn, like, I don't know, when people in like Japan pick this up and they're talking about Cong Burn, they're actually talking about a very small bit of water in the northeast, which is weird. It's one of those things that when 5 years ago, when you come up with the name, you don't think it's going to last, and then here we are 5 years later. I got to stick with it. Yeah.
People will be making pilgrimages from all around the world to this tiny.
But yeah, it's also like a catch-all term for NTS radio show and a record label that I also run. The software is kind of the most recent addition to it.
Okay, cool. So your software is called Strokes.
Yes.
Tell us what it does.
Yeah, so Strokes is a VSC3 audio unit. It's also a standalone application on iOS and an AUV3 on iOS. So the idea is it's like an all-in-one groove box for sequencing, sampling, synthesis, and modulation. Modulation's the key thing. Like the most critical thing it does is it's a really unique modulation system. So just to break it down, on this first page here, we've got an 8-track MIDI sequencer. Each one of these rows here can run it's like an independent rate and an independent direction. So immediately, polyrhythms are really good. There's two sequencing modes. There's a Euclidean sequencer mode or a step sequencing mode. Steps your typical TR Zuck style sequencer. Each sequencer also has a dedicated parameter sequencer down here. Now, the movement of these is going to follow, so whenever we get a note on channel 1, the sequence is going to advance. Now, when you tie that together with a modular like a modulation system, what that means is that what's sequencing the pitch on channel 1 can be sequencing the reverb on channel 2, the timbre parameters at channel 3. So when you build a bunch of these different connections together, you know, affecting one channel of the sequencer, making one change is going to have knock-on effects to the rest of your patch. So yeah, it's a kind of a whole ecosystem that works together towards, like, you know, one change, one place is going to have knock-on effects everywhere else. So I've just talked about the sequencers so far, but we also have this voices page. And this has, it's like an 8-part multi-timbral synthesizer sampler. There's 16 different synthesis engines ported from Mutable Instruments Plus, which is a really insanely popular Europe module. So you get a really like versatile oscillator in there. It's also in some like Arturia stuff that's here as well. You get 8 instances of that. So you've got 8 synthesizers, 8 samplers, a reverb, and a delay. And this is all hooked up to the 8-track sequencer as well. Yeah, when you're working in Strokes, you're working inside of one of 5 patterns, A, B, C, D, or E. And in the latest update, we got this page here, this performance page. Rather than just switching between A, B, C, D, you can actually select B on the left, C on the right, and then morph between them and interpolate between them. Now, when you do that, it's not an audio crossfade that's happening, it's a parameter crossfade. So all the sequence parameters, all the synthesis parameters morph underneath. You know, if you put it somewhere in the middle, you're going to get a completely different set of sounds that's halfway between the two. So for doing live stuff, really handy for that. For doing transitions between different parts, it's really useful for that as well. We could also load in an external project and morph into that project. Now what that means is that if you've got 20 different Strokes project files, you can step through them one at a time, morph between them on a sound by sound, sequence by sequence basis. So yeah, really cool for doing live stuff.
Wow, that sounds incredibly deep.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've been working on it for about 2.5 years. It used to be a Max to Live device, which I started 4 years ago. The first page, the sequence page you're looking at, actually hasn't changed in 4 years. Just been a lot of other stuff added around the sides and stuff. Yeah, I kind of stuck on that.
You use in your own music a lot?
Yeah. So the last record that I did was Strokes and a mono machine, electro mono machine, a machine drum, and a Nord modular G2 with Strokes as the only sequencer. So yeah, it's super flexible and versatile. When it's running here in live, you don't actually have to use the internal synth engines. You can get all of the MIDI out in any host. In fact, you can get MIDI out, MIDI CC out, hook that up to different plugins, different hardware. So from one window, you can sequence your entire studio.
Incredible. So this has been out a while now. How much does it cost?
£35.
Whoa. That's a long sequencer for £35.
Yeah, that's right. The price might go up soon, so I'd grab it soon.
Grab it while you can.
But yeah, it's £35 for the VSC3 and the audio unit. It's actually £20 on iOS. If you want the two together, it's $45. hit me up for a discount and I can arrange that. I've also got dispatch here, which we haven't talked about. That's a Max for Live device, which is £25 as well. I can talk about that for a second if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. So there's one of the kind of limitations with live is that when you're kind of doing complex modulation with LFOs and sequencers, once you press map and click a parameter, that's it. You can't really do much else with it after that. So what dispatch does is it lets you mix different modulation signals together. So here we got a sine wave LFO. Here we got a pulse, and then we can blend them together and create new shapes. And then we can assign that to one of 20 modulation destinations. Each has their own submix. So you can have 20 different modulation signals going at once. There's 7 different modulation sources that I built in there, which you won't find in any other backside device. You can also connect it up to Eurorack stuff. You can put a CV input, you got CV outputs as well. So yeah, I kind of designed dispatch to be the cross employment between Eurorack, MIDI, hardware, and live. If you're ever like making music in live and you end up in a situation where you've got 16 LFOs nested in subracks and you can't really, it becomes very, very difficult to manage. Dispatch takes all that and just puts it in one window for you. So yeah, the LFOs here can be sent to, it's all coming from one source, you know.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah, dispatch is £25. Also very cheap, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks, John. Great to meet you.
You too, cheers.